Welcome back to Grand Prairie Public Library's YouTube channel. My name is Michaela Meyer, and today we are here for our second episode of Bake It, where we bake, which is super fun. So today we're actually going to bake cookies, not just do them on the stove. So you do need to make sure you have your parent or your guardian's permission before you touch the oven. Have to talk to them, okay? So parents, guardians, permissions to touch the oven, and if you need to use a knife for any reason, obviously I would talk to them about that. Ideally, this would be something you can do together with your parents. Woohoo! Also, today I would like to announce that we are opening up a competition for you to submit yourself baking a family recipe. Our summer reading game theme is around the world, so recipes from different cultures, whether it's from East India or from New Brunswick or wherever you happen to be from. We'd love to see some of your recipes, host them on our channel, and anyone whose video is selected to be played will win a prize. The details are below. We look forward to seeing what you guys have in your videos because you guys probably have more interesting recipes than me anyway. Today we're gonna cook one of my favorite cookies in the world. I only discovered them a couple years ago. They're not a family recipe. There's not a lot of recipes that I love that aren't family recipes. It's kind of a outlier for me, but I really wanted a good monster cookie one day, and I was looking online and I found Sally's Baking Edition. Link to the recipe and her blog is below. She's given us permission to use the recipe in this video, so yay Sally, thank you so much. These cookies are called soft baked monster cookies, and they have peanut butter and oats and M&Ms and chocolate chips, and they taste so good. They're chewy and yummy, and they're just so delicious. So I hope you enjoy them. I unfortunately have to make one minor adjustment to the recipe today because I do not have the right type of sugar. So I'm going to be using dark brown sugar instead of golden brown sugar, which I've never done before. I've always followed her recipe exactly. So if you're making this at home, do it her way. I don't have my card today to go and get another type of sugar. So what you need for this, I have a stand mixer. You do not need a stand mixer. I just like to use it for cookies. So you can mix them by hand. It's totally doable. It's not a big deal, but I have this, so I'm gonna use it. Thank you, Mom. So today you need salted butter, half of a cup, and it should be at room temperature. So I've got mine out nice and thawing on my cutting board. I cut it so it thaw faster because mine was in the freezer. You need, what else do you need? You need a half cup of packed light brown sugar. Again, I'm really sorry, I don't have light brown sugar. It's definitely gonna change the flavor of the cookies, which I'm not as excited about because I really like the way they taste, but I need to make this video today, so we're gonna try it with this. Granulated sugar, which is just your basic white sugar. Ta-da! Your basic white sugar. We also need all-purpose flour, normal flour. You need an egg, should also be at room temperature, so mine's sitting out. You need vanilla extract, you need baking soda, you need peanut butter, creamy peanut butter. There's gonna be lots of other crunchy bits with the M&Ms and the chocolate chips, so do recommend using the creamy peanut butter. And of course, chocolate chips, M&Ms. I use full-size M&Ms. You can use mini M&Ms. You can probably use peanut M&Ms if you want to. These are just the ones I've always made this recipe with. And last but not least, you need quick oats. They don't have to be this brand, it really doesn't matter, but they do need to be quick oats. I never use quick oats. I always use rolled oats. Except for this recipe. For this recipe, I buy quick oats, which is a pretty big deal because I'm using the wrong kind of sugar just because it's not in the house. So quick oats are important. All right, and that is all the ingredients that you need. Of course, you also need your measuring implements, access to the oven, and a bowl to mix in, but I'm gonna be mixing in my stand mixer. So let us try this out. But if you are using a stand mixer, paddle attachment. Okay, so mixer's ready to go. Hands are washed. Talk to the parent. I'm the adult, so that's okay. Oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? And then you're ready to start. Cream the butter and sugars together. So I've got my half cup of butter here. So I'm just gonna shoot that right in. Okay, so then we have our butter in the mixer. We're going to add a half of a cup of packed brown sugar. As I mentioned, I do not have light brown sugar. Your sugar would ideally be a golden color instead of this brown. They're not too different. Dark brown sugar has a higher molasses content, which is going to change the cookies just a little bit. At the end of the day, I know when I lived in Ukraine, I couldn't get brown sugar at all, so I just used white sugar in all my cookies. And again, it did change the flavor. They weren't as good, but they do work. So I'm sure this will work okay, but do not run to the store to buy dark brown sugar for these cookies if you have light brown sugar, because every time I've made it in the past has been with light brown sugar and it has been amazing, and the recipe specifically does call for packed light brown sugar. So you notice I'm packing it in, I'm depressing with a spoon quite firmly so that I really make sure that the brown sugar is filling the whole half cup. This is the only ingredient that you're going to pack, okay? Pretty much standard when you're making cookies, if you're adding brown sugar, it's meant to be packed. Even if it doesn't say so, most recipes will say so. I don't think I've ever met a recipe where you don't pack your brown sugar. So that's that. It's nice when you plop it down, there's this nice big cup shape. I like to pull all of my ingredients out so that I have access to them, and that way I don't forget anything because I can see if it's still on the counter, which is why it always looks like such a mess when I start cooking because there's so much stuff out. I just put them away as I go so I know I'm not forgetting anything. So there is my packed brown sugar. Now I need 1/4 of a cup of white sugar. A little scoop. That one we can just scoop out like that. Nice and easy. And then we're gonna cream it. So because there's powder in there, I am gonna put my splash guard on. Probably not gonna need it, but really doesn't hurt anything. So as you can see, it looks almost like cookie dough. It is creamy. We've got the sugar and the butter in there, and I'm gonna let it go for a couple more minutes, but that's what we're trying to get. Okay, so now we've creamed the butter and the sugar, so we're gonna add the peanut butter, then the egg, and the vanilla. So we need 3/4 of a cup of the creamy peanut butter. I'm gonna use my handy dandy spatula. 3/4 of a cup is a 1/2 cup plus 1/4 of a cup. Okay, so we've got 3/4 of a cup of smooth peanut butter. We have cleaned measuring utensils because I'm gonna need those again later. We're gonna add the egg. I like to wash my eggs and then crack them into a separate container. That way it's easier to fish out shell if I happen to break it badly. And if you've ever ruined a cake by dumping a rotten egg in, there was bits of chicken in it. It was a very unpleasant experience. But again, not in this country, so I think they have better rules for that. Old habits. All right, so we have 1 egg. I'm gonna put that in. And we've got some vanilla. Gonna let that go on low. Often if you're using a stand mixer or even a hand mixer, you will have to go in and clean up the splatter. It gets pushed onto the side. You can just take a spatula and push it right back down into the bottom of the bowl. And then you're good to go. Or make a mess. You know, whichever floats your boat. All right, so that is mixed. Now we have to add in the baking soda and the flour. I always like to make sure this stage is really mixed because once you add the flour, you can start to overwork your dough and you don't want to do that. So baking soda, we need a 1/2 teaspoon. It's an easy one to measure. It's got a little like strip on the top. Scrapes off the top of your spoon. There's a very specific way we are going to measure the flour. I actually learned this way from this blog, and it's her recipe, so we're going to measure it her way. It actually works really well for most recipes, except for my recipes, because I'm already used to how much flour I need when I do it my way. But when I'm doing a new recipe, this is how I measure flour now. 1 1/4 cups of spooned and leveled, which is how she refers to this method. So I have my spoon, I've got my cup, and I just very gently scoop it in. We're not packing at all. We're just spooning it in until it's full. Flour is actually, can be really tricky to measure for recipes because it can get packed or not packed enough, and that really changes how much flour is actually really important to what your dough comes out like. So then we leveled off the top, sorry. We dump it in. And then we do that again with a 1/4 cup. So the most precise way to measure flour is with a kitchen scale, but most recipes in the kitchen don't use a kitchen scale, which is why it's really important that you figure out how they measured flour when they did the recipe. But this is a really solid way. It works for most recipes, so I do recommend it. Spooned. Leveled. Done. All right, so now we do really need the splash guard. We're just gonna get that a little bit mixed. And we're done with that. Then we add in the M&Ms and the oats and the chocolate chips. And these, we're just gonna mix it long enough that they like get mixed throughout. We're not trying to mix the dough anymore at this point, okay? So your dough should be done. And then we're going to add a 1/2 cup of quick oats. Three-quarters of a cup of M&Ms. So how do you measure 3/4 of a cup? Well, you can either use a cup and like eyeball it, or you can take a 1/2 cup and a 1/4 cup and do both. We're being precise because we're on YouTube, so I will. Pretend that I measure M&Ms in real life. Same with chocolate. And then we combine it all together in a stand mixer until it's all nice looking. Doesn't that look delicious? Makes me so hungry. All right. So that is our dough. All right, so wipe the counter down. I've got my cookie sheets. I need parchment paper. This just protects my pans and makes cleanup so much faster. So the oven was already preheated to 350. So this is gonna go into the oven for about 10 minutes. So never put your pans down on your counter without a hot pad underneath. And of course, don't put your hands in the oven to pull out a tray of cookie unless you're wearing oven mitts. Kind of a no-brainer, but I gotta say it anyway. So the cookies, my oven is so temperamental. I left them in for 10 minutes. They're definitely done. You actually want them to look kind of like this. You don't want them, they almost finished cooking on the cookie sheet, and we do want really, really soft cookies. We can't touch them for a little bit. They need to cool on the sheet, finish cooking, and then we'll transfer them to a cooling sheet. My oven, unfortunately, doesn't have a light on the inside, so you don't get to watch them bake. So down on my hot sheet, you can see they look almost uncooked. That's perfect. And then I squished them down just a little bit before they went into the oven, because these cookies don't spread that much. You can also use a spoon to depress the tops a little bit while they're warm, but I like them like this. We'll let them finish cooling a bit here, and we'll transfer them to the baking rack, and I'll show you what they look like when they're done.